Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really incredible story about a young guy named Ethan who managed to crack the code of human behavior. From a pretty early age, Ethan essentially reverse engineered the mechanics of how we all interact, how we make decisions, and how we form relationships. But what makes his journey so compelling isn't just the psychological playbook he put together, it's the core realization he walked away with. He discovered that true psychological insight is, at its heart, about empathy and connection. It is absolutely not about tactical manipulation. If you've ever caught yourself watching the totally contradictory ways people act and wondered what on earth is driving them beneath the surface, you are going to find these insights incredibly valuable. We're going to unpack exactly why empathy radically outpaces manipulation when it comes to applied psychology. So let's just get right into it. To kick things off, let's ask the exact same questions Ethan asked himself when he started this deep dive into behavioral science. Have you ever wondered why people so often lie when just telling the truth would logically be way easier? Or why they explode with anger over the tiniest, most trivial inconveniences? Or, and this is a big one, why we can completely trust a total stranger within seconds of meeting them, but we consistently second-guess the motives of our oldest friends? Our logical brains really struggle to process these emotionally driven, irrational behaviors. We kind of expect everyone to act like rational economic agents, predictably maximizing their own self-interest. But as we all know, humans just don't operate on pure logic. We operate on this massive, messy web of cognitive biases, evolutionary triggers, and emotional self-preservation. Well, instead of just writing all these paradoxes off as random noise, Ethan decided to treat them as data points just waiting to be decoded. And that brings us to a massive mindset shift. Study, don't judge. From a psychological standpoint, we humans naturally default to judgment. It's basically a rapid ego defense mechanism. When someone does something we don't understand or we just flat out disagree with it, judging them is easy. It requires almost zero cognitive effort and it immediately protects our own worldview. But Ethan realized something crucial. Suspending that judgment requires active, conscious mental effort. So instead of reacting emotionally to frustrating people, he made a calculated choice. He decided to become an objective student of the human mind. He started absorbing psychological literature and just quietly observing the daily behaviors around him without assigning any moral weight to them. He recognized that judgment literally shuts down the analytical part of your brain, whereas curiosity keeps your prefrontal cortex engaged. And that is what opens the door to totally understanding someone's behavior. This kind of intense, methodical observation led him to his very first major breakthrough about human nature. He noticed that people's actions always reveal more than their words. Now, I know that sounds like a cliche, but the psychological mechanism behind it is actually profound when you break it down. It's all about the difference between behavioral consistency and verbal framing. Think about it. Words are highly curated, right? They represent the idealized version of how we wish society would see us. We literally use language to construct an identity. But consistent actions, especially when someone is under pressure, well, that reveals a person's actual baseline programming. If you want to accurately decode psychology, you have got to look past the verbal framing and track the hard data of their behavior. Words can deceive because they're cheap and easy to produce, but consistent actions require real energy, making them the ultimate truth tellers of human intent. Section Unlocking Human Behavior. Let's take a look at the specific psychological playbook Ethan built from all these observations. By watching interactions without judging them, Ethan picked up on 4 distinct underlying patterns that dictate how we all operate, and it's super fascinating to see how they interlock. First up, people frequently mask really painful or complex emotions behind a polite smile. It's a default social defense mechanism we use just to keep the peace and maintain group harmony. Second, we are literally wired by evolution to trust confident individuals over nervous ones. Our ancient survival instincts use confidence as a shortcut for competence, regardless of whether that confident person is actually telling the truth. Third, emotional resonance vastly outperforms semantic memory. This just means people are going to remember how you made them feel long after they've completely forgotten the actual words you said. And finally, people reveal their true baseline personality through small, mundane habits. Why? Because the cognitive load it takes to fake your true nature all day is just too high. In those tiny, unscripted moments, like how someone talks to a barista or a waiter, the mask inevitably slips, and you get a perfect read on who they really are. Expanding on that idea of emotional resonance, there is such a stark contrast between what you say and how you make people feel. We spend a massive amount of mental energy obsessing over our exact phrasing, don't we? We script our words to sound smart, persuasive, perfectly composed. However, cognitive psychology tells us that emotional memory is processed way deeper in the brain, specifically in the amygdala, compared to the semantic memory that handles our exact vocabulary. Emotional impact biologically outweighs syntax. It's wild. If you want to deeply influence or truly connect with someone, you have to shift your focus away from the intellectual framing of your argument and focus on the emotional state you are inducing in them. Long after the conversation ends, that lingering feeling is literally the only permanent takeaway they are going to keep.
Moving on to using psychology wisely. Raw data is pretty useless if you don't apply it. So let's see how Ethan used these powerful insights in the real world.
So, as Ethan gathered this high-level understanding of all these behavioral triggers, he hit a major ethical crossroads centered around power. When you understand exactly how cognitive biases and emotional shortcuts work, it becomes disturbingly easy to exploit those blind spots. Manipulation relies on weaponizing these psychological triggers for short-term, zero-sum gains. It's all about extracting an advantage at the expense of someone else's autonomy. But Ethan recognized that manipulation is totally unsustainable. Why? Because it completely destroys trust the second the target realizes they've been played. So, he took a different route. He opted for the path of pure understanding. He chose to use those exact same insights to build long-term, compounding trust instead. And that is a profound shift. Using behavioral science not to outmaneuver people, but to foster genuine alignment and connection. Choosing that higher path of understanding triggered an amazing chain reaction in his life, because he learned to listen past the surface and actually hear the unspoken fears and desires driving a person's behavior. He could naturally tailor his communication. He wasn't just talking at people anymore, he was speaking directly to their underlying psychological needs. This tailored communication proactively neutralized defensiveness, which meant he was solving and de-escalating conflicts peacefully before they even had a chance to blow up. And the ultimate payoff of this sequence, the development of incredibly deep, resilient friendships. The compounding effect of making people feel genuinely seen and deeply respected transformed him into an absolute magnet for trust. By focusing on mutual understanding, he achieved a level of influence that manipulation could literally never, ever sustain. Let's step into our final section, the ultimate lesson. Years later, after testing these principles in the real world, Ethan shared a realization that ties this whole explainer together. Looking back on the mechanics of human interaction, he came to this profound conclusion. The greatest skill isn't controlling people, it's understanding them. That right there encapsulates the entire premise of applied psychology. Trying to control people is a fragile, exhausting illusion. It requires constant pressure, and it inherently creates resistance. True psychological mastery is about deeply understanding the root causes of emotions, behavior, and communication. When you get the core drivers behind an action, you can navigate the complexities of the world with empathy, adapt your own responses, and make significantly wiser decisions. Sure, control might get you some temporary compliance, but deep, structural understanding, that is a true superpower that allows for lasting, meaningful impact. It all comes down to a clear, irreversible progression. Understand people, improve yourself, build better relationships. You simply cannot reverse engineer this sequence. You can't build better relationships without first doing the hard internal work to improve your own emotional intelligence. And you certainly can't improve yourself without first taking a step back to objectively understand the people and the environment around you. When you genuinely seek to understand the behavioral patterns we've unpacked today, your own growth is inevitable, and that growth forms the unshakable foundation for every single connection you make. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time someone frustrates you, confuses you, or acts in a way that just completely defies logic, will you react with immediate ego-driven judgment? Or will you use these patterns of understanding to step back, observe their baseline programming, and radically transform the way you connect with the world today?